a little bit about the journey of turning a 125-year-old Japanese company and opening up to a more global company. And he will give us a little bit of an intro how these strategies worked out to do this change. So welcome, Jerry.
Great. Thank you, Gabrielle. Good morning. My name is Jerry Pico. And for the last roughly 2.5 years, I've been leading a global culture transformation initiative for Daiichi Sankyo. Has anybody heard of Daiichi Sankyo? Oh, one person, 2 people? Great. You know, the thing about Daiichi Sankyo is, let's just go one more, give you a sense of who we are. So, as Gabrielle said, we're a 125-year-old Japanese pharmaceutical company, and we do business in roughly 26 countries. We have 17,000 employees, and what's not known is that in Japan, our company is the 7th largest company by market capitalization on the Nikkei index. So we're actually a very large company in Japan, and we're making way in the West. And how are we doing that? We're becoming an innovative healthcare provider. So let me just go back for a second. The one thing I've learned is that whenever I begin a new program or project or initiative, it needs to be aligned with what the business goals are. And if possible, it needs to be led by the business. Because my experience tells me, and I come from a hardcore business background, I started my career in sales and management, that if it's an HR initiative, people don't really pay attention to it. And maybe you don't like me for saying that, but it's true. It's viewed as administrative, check the box. But if it's led by business, then people take it seriously. And if you engage the business and let them lead it, okay, then they buy into it, because if the business doesn't buy into what you're selling, it's not going to work. So when we started, we wanted to align with the business goals. So in 2020, the nice thing about a Japanese company is they have a very long-term view. There's pros and cons, but the nice thing is they have a long-term view, and once they commit, they're committed. So in 2020, we came out with our 2030 vision and our 2025 5-year plan. And our 2030 vision is to be an innovative global healthcare company contributing to the sustainable development of society, which is really, really a great goal. And in order to do that, we decided we needed to be more global. So the way that Daiichi Sankyo was organized is that we had a Japanese headquarters and we had regional hubs, and they weren't really connected. Japan gave targets to the US and to Europe every year, and then just let us execute the way we wanted to. As long as we delivered, they didn't interfere. But the thing is to compete with global big pharma, we needed to become more of an interconnected global organization. So we've switched our therapeutic areas, or we're in the process of doing that, from cardiovascular to oncology, which is a much different kind of medicine. It's more personalized. So this is an estimate of where our business will go over the next 5 years. And as you can see, our non-oncology business will stay about the same, whereas our oncology business will grow by about 150%. And how are we going to make that happen? Culture. So we see culture as a driver of our business. And we also see it as a driver of our profitability. So this is where our share price has gone in the last 3 years since we began this initiative. And we took a dip during COVID, as many companies did. But as you can see, the trajectory is quite good. So one thing, back at the tech desk back there, I can't see my presentation here. Thank you. So how did we do this? So back in 2021, we did a very deep dive diagnostic using McKinsey as a partner. And we conducted interviews with 60 of our global leaders. We ran basically focus groups with roughly 300 middle managers. And then we conducted a culture survey that consisted of 4 questions, which we received an 80% response rate, which for those of you who know about response rates, that's actually pretty high. That's the other really great thing about a Japanese company. So what did we do with the survey results? We identified 5 areas of disconnect or opportunities that we needed to address. So there were really cultural disconnects, but it wasn't just intercultural, it was interfunctional, intertherapeutical area, so there were a lot of silos in the company, which is not unusual. The local leaders didn't understand how what they did contributed to the strategy, so we needed to be more clear about what was expected and why they were doing what they were doing. There was a lot of inefficiency because we weren't all connected. And there wasn't a lot of focus on talent development outside of Japan. So the way that it's interesting, because now we're going through a really big transformation of all of our systems, HR systems, and the way that the philosophy underlying the different talent management systems in Japan and Europe and the US is very, very different. In Japan, you get hired out of college and you retire at the company. And the way that they do talent management is they move people into different roles every year. So, and what they did also is that they would send about 100 expats out each year to the regions, but they wouldn't take anybody in Japan. So that was a big problem because we want to be a global company, but we need to have a global offering to our employees where people can grow and develop. And then this is a big one, and this is what we're going to talk about today. We want to be an innovative healthcare company, but we're afraid to fail. Okay? So fear of failure inhibits creativity and initiative taking by both individuals and teams. So this was a really big area, and we decided we needed to address that. So what we did is we came up with 3 core behaviors. The first one, to address these different areas of opportunity, the first one was to be inclusive and embrace diversity, which it's great because I was involved in crafting all of these and I can fully stand behind them. The next one is collaborate and trust. And then the final one is to develop and grow. And this is the one we really want to focus on today. How does it fit into the whole big picture? So this is our purpose, mission, and vision. I'm not going to read through these. You can read them out. You'll get the presentation later. And then these are our core values: innovation, integrity, and accountability. And once again, innovation is key for us. We need to develop innovative pharmaceuticals, and we can't do that if we're not experimenting. And finally, our core behaviors that basically give people a blueprint of how they can live the company values. So when we began the journey, after we did the diagnostic, we entered a multi-year global culture initiative. And we partnered with Korn Ferry, and we had a whole series of workshops. Now, the way our company is organized, we have an executive management committee, which is about 20 people, and they run the company. And then under that, we have roughly 200 global leaders in the regions and in global roles. So what we did is we introduced them to the culture map. Everybody here, or hands, who's familiar with the culture map? Well, if you're not, you should read it. It's great. If you work interculturally, even if you work pan-European, it's great, because it gives you a really simple framework for how to understand people from different cultures. And so our EMC, top 20 people, went through in 2021, went through 18 hours of workshops together. Initially, they didn't want to do that much, but we pushed them. They said, if you're going to invest in this, you need to be behind it, and you need to lead it. So the CEO is leading it with the executive management committee. Then the next year, they did another 15 hours of workshops with the top 200 leaders. So like a total of about 27, 30 hours of workshops just on culture by our top leadership. So what we did is, in our survey last year, so we did our first year-over-year global engagement survey. And what we noticed is we had the same strengths and opportunities that came up in the diagnostic. So this was the first culture survey engagement survey that we did. And as you can see, learning from mistakes was also there. Now, the numbers on the left show where we are in comparison to the global benchmark. The number on the right is how we performed in the last year, whether we went up or down. So as you can see, we're making progress from learning from mistakes, but we still have a ways to go. So what we did is we looked at, on the survey question, about what is affecting employees from taking time to learn from mistakes. And this is a word cloud that came from some of the free-form comments that we had. And then we also did a deeper dive to look at what were the themes. So basically, people were feeling that they didn't have enough time because they were overworked to really stop and look at what they were doing and to learn from their experiences or mistakes. They wanted to have some way to institutionalize the learning from mistakes or learning from experiences and sharing lessons learned. The real important part is to think about not who caused something to go wrong, but how it went wrong, what could have been prevented, and how you can prevent it in the future. And then, the other thing is just about not trying, not going out and experimenting. If you don't take risks, then you don't learn, okay? So we had this, the EMC made a global commitment to have a culture of learning. And the way that we wanted to do that is the EMC and their direct reports needed to meet with their teams roughly on a monthly basis to talk about what worked and what didn't work and how they could prevent mistakes from happening in the future and to encourage each other to take risks. So this is very much a top-down effort. So one of the things that I did is I went to, every year in April, because that's the beginning of the fiscal year, we have a meeting of our top 150 leaders to talk about the business strategy. So what we did this year is we also added on a whole day about culture. So how many of you have a company where you can spend a whole day with 150 of your top executives talking about culture? Anybody? It's actually, like I said, I love the commitment of my company. So they asked me to support the culture of learning, they asked me to do a keynote for the leaders on growth mindset. So in part of preparing for that, I decided to ask the smartest entity on the earth, ChatGPT, about growth mindset. And I won't read through the whole thing, but I got some really great answers. And I showed this to the executives as well. And they were pretty, I would say, it impacted them. And then it's like, what happens if you don't have a growth mindset and if you have a fixed mindset? And I think most of us have probably worked in an environment like this where stagnation, reduced performance, culture of fear, micromanagement, and low morale. So we really wanted to have this culture of learning, and we're really working on ingraining it into the culture that we have. So the question is, we did all of these initiatives. We also, every month in the fall, or 3 months in the fall, last year, we had 1 month for our each core behavior, where we had a whole series of activities. We did meetings in a box. We sent them to all of the people managers, and we gave them basically a toolkit for how to facilitate meetings with their teams. The other thing that we're doing is the CEO is meeting with all of his direct reports to review the survey results for their teams. And he wants them to also go into the dashboard that we have and review the survey results with their teams. So we really are doing this from the top down, but we also are using a lot of bottom-up support. So we have a cadre of culture ambassadors, roughly about 200 people who support the global leaders and basically work in the business to encourage and support the culture transformation. So how do you measure this? There's a couple of ways. I'm still working on some really hard KPIs for the business But in our year-over-year global engagement survey results, so our response rate was 89%. Our engagement score is 76. It went up 2 points in 1 year, and it's 1 point now above the global benchmark and 1 point above the pharma benchmark. And out of 22 items on the survey, all of them went up, none of them went down. So we had a response rate roughly of 15,000 people. Now, I'd like to see if there's any other companies here that have a response rate on their engagement survey of almost 90%. No? It's actually quite impressive. So what I wanted to say is that, once again, if you want to do a culture transformation, it's a long-term thing. We've been doing this for 2.5 years, and we realize that we're only maybe halfway through. The other thing that we've done to support this is we're working on our whole infrastructure. So it's really nice to have a new culture and to transform and become a culture of learning, but if you don't have the infrastructure to support it, it won't survive, okay? It won't thrive. So we have now 9 HR initiatives going on. We're aligning our talent management, performance management, rewards, all of our systems. First, we're working on a philosophy. So I'm working on one team now to do a people philosophy for each of these areas because they're so different, the underlying philosophies to the practices. And now we're also launched a new initiative to have a global HRIS because we're not connected. So if we don't have same grading, same performance management, we can't have global mobility. So we're working on this concurrently with what we're doing. So we've had a lot of success, and we're still going. And we have a lot of work to do, but hopefully we will continue to succeed by creating this culture of learning, by having our leaders lead the way and show by sharing their experiences, their mistakes, and coming down through the organization, and we're already seeing the impact. And that's our 1DS culture. Thank you, and now I'm open for questions.
So thank you, Jerry, for this impressive journey of a 125-year-old company into a more global company. So I have a first question.
Please.